Oh, yeah.
AM 1280 News Talk, KIT. 742. What?
Oh, yeah.
Time.
It's time. Every Tuesday from, here for the next 100 days.
5 days.
Yeah, I know, but
Well,
it's going to be 104 days. If they leave on time, we're going to be talking to our lawmakers from our side of the state, the folks that got our interests in mind. And we are going to do this every Tuesday, 7:40, and we start off with Representative Gina Mosbrucker of Goldendale, 14th District State Representative, and good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well.
Good, Gina. Good morning.
I was hoping you were going to promise it was just 105 days.
Just
I know.
and not
no
a
extra.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. You are a fifth-generation resident of Klickitat County, the first person elected to the state legislature from Klickitat County since 1982. How awesome. Wow. That is really cool. You are the vice chair of the House Republican Caucus. You also serve as ranking Republican on the House Labor and Workplace Standards Committee, and two other committees include the House Appropriations Committee, which considers the state operating budget, and the State Government and Tribal Relations Committee. Man, you have got your hands full. That is.
There's not a lot of free time. No.
Yeah, no wonder you want this session to end in 104 days.
That's right. Important work to do.
Yeah.
Well, you have risen to positions of responsibility rather rapidly there, Wonder Kid, if we may call you that.
I have great parents. I think that they instill that work ethic, so I blame it on my parents.
I think you were able to corner your toxic femininity. We've been talking about toxic masculinity all morning. You haven't been able to hear that, but we'll just throw that out there for those folks who've been listening along. But we do want to hear you this morning. You have a number of bills that you're working on, and another list of sort of thematic directions you'd like to see the state go with all of this. And one of them, I've got a 10-year-old, and she doesn't ride the bus now, but she may, depending on what school she goes to and all of that. And you are looking at seatbelts on school buses. Give us a little bit of background on that.
Sure. Well, this is what I call a 5-year bill. I think it's going to take 5 years to pass. What we're doing is we're changing a culture, basically. You know, when we grew up, we had anything that we got into, we didn't have a seatbelt on. In fact, I think I used to argue with my brother to ride in the back window of the car, clear back that far. Yeah, so
I my brother back
did
there.
you do that too? No, I wanted to ride back there. It was a good sunroof view. But anyhow, so we didn't have seatbelts growing up, and I've had numerous people reach out to me and say, if we are theoretically safer with seatbelts on our highways and transportation systems in moving vehicles, why is that not true on a bus? And so for years, there's many associations that thought it was safer because the seats were higher and many other issues. But what we found is that it's not, and that there's many associations that have switched over to support seatbelts on school buses. There's some throughout the state that have ordered their school buses with seatbelts. Centerville, the place, a small town near where I live, did, and Muckaty. There's quite a few of them actually across the state. And we're just trying to tell the story and make it clear to, kids that whenever you get in a moving vehicle, put your seatbelt on. I had a family come up, and I think it was really moving because they said, I have 2 children. They were from the Yakima area, and one is disabled and one is not. And they said, why are you keeping one of my children safe? Because that special need disabled child has a lap shoulder belt every time it goes to school in the mornings, and the other one does not. So the child would literally cry after school because it didn't want to get on the bus because it didn't have a seatbelt. Because we tell our kids, when you go to a birthday party or grandma's house, put your seatbelt on, it keeps you safe. So we're sending mixed messages to children. The big thing about this bill is I would never run it if it was an impact on school districts or even the state budget. So this bill would be fiscally responsible by the stop paddle violations. So every time the bus paddle goes out and someone passes it illegally, there is about over a $400 ticket. However, we're not really enforcing that. And so in a point in time study we did last May, what happened was there was over 1,500 violations in one day reported by bus drivers.
Wow. So you think that there's enough of those to till they get wise to us to put to put seatbelts and have those fines pay for it then. Is
Well,
that the deal?
yeah, it is. And the great thing is that not only could I pay for seatbelts on new school buses that have come online, we could also have enough money left over to give a third of the money to police officers and law enforcement to patrol around school districts, which would keep schools even safer, and also to watch for those violations because we were told that there's not enough officers to do that near school districts. And then also the courts were saying we don't have time to process all those tickets. And so it would also give the court system and the local government a third of the money. I'd still have enough for seatbelts and school buses. So it would just be a camera that turns on only when someone passes that paddle and it takes a picture of their license plate.
Gotcha. One of the things that I remember most from the campaign was your opponent referenced your efforts to have these untested rape kits dealt with. I believe referred to that as an unfunded mandate or something like that. I was very surprised by that, but that's in the past.
It is.
And you're still on the topic, though. Sexual assault forensic examination training, best practices. You want to. It's bad enough to have to endure the crime, but it's a second crime if we don't take our evidence and deal with it properly and move effectively towards justice. So, how would your legislation work on that?
Well, that was untrue. So it's not an unfunded mandate. All we're doing is we were asking that the hospitals, the college campuses, and the police law enforcement stations across the state of Washington turn in any rape kits that they have. We thought that they were all being submitted, and then there's a lab that tests them. So it's not a mandate on the local government or the college campus. We're asking law enforcement to turn them in, or these campuses. What the sad thing is that we started this work 3 years ago. There were about 6,000 untested kits in Washington state. Now there's over 10,000 that have been turned in. And these are kits that the victim thought were tested.
Oh, amazing.
So the state of Washington, we failed these victims. And so we're doing everything we can to get these tested. We asked for $2.5 million out of the budget last year and got it, and got 7 new crime lab techs at the crime lab to process these. But the number of kits that are coming in, because victims are saying, oh, you're really going to test our kit, so they're more likely to report. So we're more likely to get that perpetrator. So when we first started back testing those bat kits, we were getting about a 20% CODIS hit, which means that there's that person that has that DNA has already committed other crimes.
They're in the system, right?
Yeah, and so now I think it was 33 was the last briefing I had. 33% of the kits that were these old kits that we're testing have CODIS hits on them, and there's perpetrators that could have committed the crime 8 different times. And rape, sadly, by nature, is a serial offense usually. And so we might have been able to prevent those even as the state of Washington if we'd done our work. So we're just fixing, doing everything we can to fix it. This year, there's a $6 million ask to make sure that we catch up because, like I said, we have over 10,000 in the state of Washington. And across the nation, I was sent to Detroit last year, there's over 500,000. So it's not a Washington issue. We're just trying to make sure Washington's fixed. We took money and we put a tracking kit on every kit that goes into Washington state system so we can track that kit as well as the victim on a secure site from the minute it's done all the way through prosecution. So we never lose those kits again.
Well, we need to do it. That's fantastic. And,
that's a great idea.
It's like I say, it's a disservice to the victims. It is a discouragement to people to even bother to seek justice if they don't think that's going to happen. And as you pointed out, it's a few that seem to be multiple offenders. So you can get them cross-referenced. You get one guy, and you probably stop. Who knows how many, and you solve how many more. So good on you, Gina, for that. We appreciate your effort there. We know mental health is going to be a big thing that you guys are dealing with. You particularly, suicide prevention. Oftentimes, there's a breakdown, even if it's temporarily, in people's healthy outlook on life when suicide is part of their consideration. So how would your suicide prevention legislation work?
Yeah, thank you for asking. The Pardon me, Jody Daly. She's our comprehensive mental health person for Washington State. She came from Montana and just came here to work for us in Washington, which we're very fortunate to have her. She worked with some legislators in Montana before she left, and they did a youth suicide review team, and they assessed the every single kit that came through that had to do with the suicide, the teen suicide in that state. They had about 550 suicides in 1 year period. Washington State has over 1,100 in the same period. And so rather than talk about how sad that is, what we're doing is we're dissecting each one of those cases, and we're trying to find the nexus or the intersectability between each of those cases. So we're trying to figure out, why are they doing it? In my legislation, I moved it not just teen, I went up to age 24, because the most suicides are from age 17 to 24 years old. And we're putting our review team for Washington State to take each one of those cases and figure out, is it cyberbullying? Is it school bullying? Is it opioid addiction? Is it mental health? Is it breakdown of family? Trying to get at that root of why these beautiful young lives would take their own life or consider doing that. So I have a dancer that I had from age 3 to 15, and she's attempted 3 different times to commit suicide. And so she's going to help me with this, and I'm very excited about her family helping. And so she's going to explain why she ended up in this situation and how she ended up. And it's really it's challenging work, but it's really important. We need to save these kids.
Well, you got some emotional bills this year.
Usually, actually.
Yeah, the bills are drawing. KIT News Time is 7:54. We are speaking with 14th District State Representative Gina Mosbrucker. Gina, you got one here that the folks at our VFW are really going to like here. Tax exemptions for VFWs.
I do. Scott Brumbach, actually, in Yakima, he brought that to me and said, we have VFWs that are closing across the nation, not just our state, and we need to help them out any way we can. These VFWs are great places for veterans who served our country to get together and work on post-traumatic stress disorder, be friends, have meals together, talk about the things that they went through to make it a little easier when they return back. And they're going out of business. So he said we have cantinas, they call them, where they serve hamburgers and they have meals for lunches and dinners. And he said, you're charging a state sales tax on the goods that we're selling. So if you take that off, the amount of money that we would save would probably save many of these VFWs. And so we're doing that work. I would love to add American Legions in that as well, but the fiscal note is too outrageous this session. So I'm going to start with VFWs, work really hard, try to get the state sales tax off of the items that are sold at each of the posts that have the cantinas, and try to, do some work in making sure we're taking care of our veterans.
Well, that's a great idea. And way to go, really, Scotty. He's a really regular listener caller to this program, and he's red, white, and blue as they come. So
he's
good
a
on
great
him.
guy. I'm really fortunate to be able to work with him on this.
Yep, I would say that that's a good assessment there, Madam Representative. All right, so with the last couple of minutes that we have, you're off and you're running. We're looking at increased Democrat margins that you guys are going to be asked to work with. A lot of your stuff cuts across the lines, but you'll have plenty to deal with that are fairly partisan issues, no doubt. And, of course, the governor's budget as the opening salvo is ridiculous in nature. What do you expect? Do you see a 105-day session? Do you see a budget coming together? Do you see trying to roll taxes that are illegal or unconstitutional? What's your assessment of what's to come here over the next 103 days?
Well, I think that we're just frustrated with the proposal because it's $54.4 billion. And the spending part of it's increased $10 billion. So we're saying, it's a 22% increase. So why do we need to do that if we already have excess revenue of $4 billion? Do we need to go back to the people and give them all these different taxes? They've got B&O tax lined up, an increase on small businesses from 1.5 to 2.5% on B&O tax. We've got capital gains tax. We got new real estate taxes in the proposal. I serve on appropriations, and it was alarming to watch those numbers yesterday. And when we were dissecting the governor's proposal, trying to find some some room for change so that this doesn't happen back to people who are trying to have jobs and make a living and pay their rent or their house payment. So we're frustrated. We don't have the votes to stop a lot of these. With Democrat control in the House, the Senate, and the governor's office, we have to rely on the bipartisan relationships that we have. I'm in a good position, I think. I've had many Democrats ask me to sign number 2 or on their bill, which is a good sign that they're going to reach out because they really don't need us. And then also, I have always had a Democrat sign on line 2 on every bill I've ever done, and they're happy to sign it. We're working together on committees. So I'm optimistic that hopefully we get out at on 105. And then I'm optimistic that they're still going to reach across the aisle because that pendulum swings, right? I mean, it may not be Democrat full control always. And I think that we need to all work together to do great policy in the state of Washington.
Well, we do if we want reasonable policy, at least from the perspective of the east side looking west. Bottom line, there is work that can get done, and you're a fine example of that. If the issues are right and it affects people, and you can filter the political gamesmanship out and just deal with the quality of life issues and things that government can do to help make things better, then there's some things that can get done. So I think it's a niche that suits you well and represents the district well. So we wish you the best of luck, Representative Mosbrucker, and we look forward to future chats and updates as your stuff moves along, okay?
Well, thank you so much for the time. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to serve and grateful for time to explain what's going on. And hopefully people will visit. I've had a lot of families up here, even Sunday, Monday, and I really love having people from home. So please come visit. I'm happy to explain, be on the radio anytime to update you.
Well, and you don't even have to wait for us to ask. If you're working on something and you just say, hey, I bet the district would like to know, give us a holler.
Yeah.
We're more than happy to give you the time, okay?
Excellent. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Representative. We appreciate it. Have a great 103 days and no more.
I will do that. Thank you so much.
All right.